Blog Talk Radio. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Medlock Post radio show. This is where we educate, entertain, enlighten, and empower. The views and opinions on the Medlock Post radio show are those of the host and guests. They are not necessarily the views and opinions of Blog Talk Radio, Spreaker.com, its corporations, affiliates, or any other podcast streaming services. Thank you for joining the show today, and here is your host, Richard G. Medlock.
We, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, do ordain and establish this Constitution for the United States of America.
Greetings, ladies and gentlemen. This is the Medlock Post radio show, and I'm your host, Richard G. Medlock, on this beautiful Friday morning, September 16th, 2022. And this is episode 53, National Constitution Day. And I don't know about you, but I still get chills when I hear the national anthem. And I hope you still do too. And so that's why I wanted to start with that, and also the preamble to the Constitution, because today we're going to talk about the Constitution. Now, I see my guest, I hope that's my guest, has connected with us, so hang on just a second there. I want to get a couple of things out of the way. On September 16th, 1620, the Mayflower departed Plymouth, England, persecution. And we know the rest of that story. At least I hope you do. I hope you know about Plymouth Rock and the Mayflower and the Pilgrims and all that stuff. Also, let me catch you up. On Wednesday, I talked about the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, the SCO, and I told you that Xi Jinping and Vladimir Putin were going to meet for the 39th time in person at this convention. They did meet yesterday, and they came out of that meeting together smiling, and said, "We will form a stronger partnership." So take note of that, ladies and gentlemen, and we will cover that some other time. But with us today is Jody Bryan. Well, that must be the wrong one. Jody, is this you? Okay, I don't know what is going on there, but I'm getting a lot of feedback when I click on. So if whoever is calling in, if you have something playing, you have the show playing in the background, you need to turn it off and listen through your phone or headsets. So let me try this again. Okay, is this Jody? Okay. All right. Let me try this other one again. Jody. Okay, I don't know what's going on there. Matter of fact, if you're still listening, I'm going to disconnect those and have you call back in. I don't know what's going on there. But anyway, we're supposed to have Jody Bryan from the 917 Society, 917 referring to September 17th, the day the Constitution was signed. While we're waiting for her, hopefully that was her, to reconnect, let me start with this. And James Madison kept a 1,000-page record of the debates in the Federal Constitution Convention of 1787. On the final page, picture of the signing of the document, and it was that was to be the Ark of our Covenant. And this is what he wrote in there on the last page of that record. Whilst the last members were signing it, Dr. Franklin, looking towards the president's chair, at the back of which a rising sun happened to be painted, observed to a few members near him that painters had found it difficult to distinguish in their art a rising from a setting sun. "I have," said he, often and often in the course of the session and the vicissitudes of my hopes and fears as to its issue, looked at that behind the president without being able to tell whether it was rising or setting. But now at length I have the happiness to know that it is a rising, not a setting sun." Now, ladies and gentlemen, this is as the founding fathers were signing the Constitution. Benjamin Franklin comes up with this statement: "We are a rising sun." And we rose for a long time. So let's try this call one more time. All right, caller, you're on the air.
Hi, Richard. It's Joni.
Okay. I said Joni earlier. I'm sorry. Yeah, I can hear you now. All righty. I don't know what was going on before, so.
I don't either. I have nothing on and nothing in the background, so I have no clue. But technology's great when it works, and it's terrible when it doesn't.
Yep, one way or the other. So thank you for joining us today. I know you have a very busy schedule right now with Constitution Day coming up tomorrow. And,
absolutely.
And before we keep going, did you hear my comment about Benjamin Franklin?
Yes.
Okay. Catch us up on what's going on. I know this is your busy time of the year with the 917society.org and kind of fill us in where you are, the progress you're making, and then let's go from there.
Okay, great. Well, we started here in Tennessee, and we are a small grassroots nonprofit, and we just wanted to honor and celebrate Constitution Day per the federal mandate. It's 108-447, so every parent, grandparent, teacher, everyone listening, you need to know about this mandate. And so we just work all year to honor Constitution Day. And so our first year in Tennessee, we gave out about 25,000 pocket constitutions and free resources to kids in the 8th grade, which is our focus, because most schools in the U.S. Have the 8th grade as the year they do civics. And so that's why we focus on 8th grade. We want to make it a rite of passage where every year, every 8th grader gets their Constitution. Well, this last year, we opened up into all 50 states. We've distributed over 1 million Constitutions across this nation, and it has just been amazing. You know, the positive response, the teachers love it, the principals love it, you know, the parents and grandparents are getting excited, and, you know, our Constitution is the one thing that binds all of us together. No matter your views, no matter, you know, anything about you, that is something that each one of us has in common. And I think it's something that needs to bring us all together.
Well, and that's a great comment, to bring us all together, and it's what we have in common. But yes, it is important in today's world that we come together with this purpose again, like the Founding Fathers did. They came into that convention. Let me read what George Washington said about that. He said, "It appears to me then, little short of a miracle, that the delegates from so many different states, which states you know are also different from each other in their manners, circumstances, and prejudices, should unite in forming a system of national government so liable to well-founded objections." Now, here he's saying what we're trying to get back to today, and I think part of the work that you're trying to do, here's our common ground. Let's come back together and get focused on the Constitution and the rule of laws.
Absolutely, absolutely. And, you know, our founding fathers, this country was founded upon debate. It was founded upon people with different views coming together for the common good. And today we are in such a politically divided society, and that's something that really needs to change. We need to get back to the basics, and that is our founding principles.
Yeah, the debate is almost gone in politics now.
Absolutely. You know, if you don't agree with someone, I was chewed out yesterday by a lady. She called me, and, you know, it's the first negative I've had in a long time, and she was upset because a certain group was helping with delivering constitutions. And I said, you know, why do you have a problem with our young people reading the Constitution? I said, what does it matter who delivers it to the school? I said, you know, we're not forcing any kind of curriculum or anything. We just want to let our kids read the Constitution. And it was just because she didn't align with the views of the other people that were helping to deliver, then all of a sudden, you know, it's like, oh, well, I'm against this. And I thought, okay, so you're against the Constitution? You know, it makes no sense to me.
And I don't know how old that person was, but a lot of people have been raised to the fact that if somebody doesn't agree with you, you are not to have a conversation with them.
Absolutely, and I thought it was very interesting because she quoted some things about the Constitution that aren't true. Our Constitution does not address separation of church and state. Our First Amendment goes into the issue of the government cannot establish a religion, period. There is nothing about church and state separation, but our population, a lot of people believe that the Constitution says that, and it doesn't. So that's why it's so crucial we read it for ourselves and understand what it actually says, and then understand when things have come about years later, where they came from, whether it be a Supreme Court decision or something else. So I think it's really important for us to get back to the basics of what our founding principles are and what our founders actually said.
Well, that's an important point because through the years and through court decisions, they've made up certain rights or privileges that are not in the Constitution, that are not in state constitutions, and that aren't in law anywhere. And then all of a sudden, either the Supreme Court or a lower court or a state court is making law. They become the legislators, and that's what we call the radical judges, the radical court. And it's not their role to make law. It's their role to give an opinion. I mentioned the other day, I was talking about this Monday. I had on a lady and a gentleman from the Convention of States, and we had a great conversation about how that's moving and the need for that, etc. And I brought up the point because I've just lost my train of thought that we were talking about the courts, and that the Supreme Court is not the final word on law. They give an opinion. They give an opinion.
Right, an interpretation. Absolutely.
And then it goes back to the legislature. A good one in case is the Dobbs ruling on Roe versus Wade. They said, states, it's all yours. But it's not in the United States Constitution. But it's all yours. And we're seeing these debates go on in several states and that are taking place. And they're still screaming and yelling and so forth. And they're still demanding a federal law and all that stuff, and the Democrats are trying to do that, but that's for a different time. But let me read something that I was on my radio show back in 2015. It was on September 17th. I played a soundbite yesterday. It goes like 10 minutes. What I was talking about the Constitution that day, the celebration, and this is what I said. Like the framers themselves, many Americans in the early years of the Republic truly regarded the Constitution as a miracle. Not only did they praise the competence, wisdom, and motivations those who served in the Federal Convention in 1787, but they declared that the formation and adoption of our new system of federal government represented a political achievement unprecedented in human history. They looked upon it, moreover, as an event that was actually influenced, guided, and governed by the hand of God. Thus, it is hard to understand why our founding fathers believed that the Constitution was destined to bless all mankind. And then it is on their successors, you and I, to preserve and defend our national charter of liberty. These convictions articulated in the statements quoted below should move today's Americans to serious reflection and appropriate action during the bicentennial and beyond. And if you want me to send you that quote and you use in your presentations, I'll be happy to.
I would love to. That would be great.
This is what we're looking at, and Joni and her organization and other organizations are trying to go back to the basics where this country was founded. It was organized, and a rule of law was put in place. Number one, to limit government, but also let the freedom of men just flourish, and it did until some egotistical people decided they wanted to take away freedoms and control everything.
Absolutely, and that's what we're seeing today. You know, we have our three divisions of government, you know, our executive branch, our legislative branch, and our judicial branch, and they each have specific roles that they play. But today, all those roles are being blurred, and we've got to get back to that distinct division of those roles of each of those groups, because that is what gives us our checks and balances. That's what gives us, you know, our founders knew, they were brilliant, and they knew that when men were given power, they become power hungry. And we see that today with so much federal overreach. You know, our 10th Amendment, you know, it talks about how the states, you know, really have the power, and the federal government is limited in its power. But because of federal funding, because of like our national education, board, and we have all of these things that are really an overreach. And we are beholding, you know, states are beholden to federal funds for schools, and it's really it's scary to see how much of a huge conglomerate bureaucracy. It's almost like our government is becoming this gigantic monster, you know, that is just in everything. And that's not what our founders intended.
Well, and I call it, the government is totally out of control right now.
It is. It absolutely is. And I think most people agree with that, no matter what side of the aisle you're on, whether you're a Democrat or Republican, libertarian especially. I think that people are seeing it and feeling it. And I think that is something that we do. I think that is a common thing that a lot of people are feeling today.
Yeah, a lot of Democrats are switching sides right now. They're waking up. They're saying, I didn't vote for you to put me in this misery. I didn't vote for you to lower my wages or how much I can spend, and it's crazy. And they're waking up to this, and they don't like this extremism that's coming from the government, and they're doing it on purpose. We know that, and we sit there and watch Biden and Harris and everybody else up there just stand there and lie to us. The Wednesday when the reports came out, and you ought to listen to my show. I went after the inflation report and went after them, but they went out and celebrated, thinking, oh, all's right with the world, and it's just the opposite. It is just the opposite, and they're still saying it today. They're still coming out and saying, what do you mean? And we have it all under control. Yeah, for you.
Well, maybe for them, but I know I'm a single lady. I'm living in Nashville, and I'm just going to, speak from my perspective. Last year, my standard of living has not changed as far as, where I live, what I drive, all those things. But I am paying $1,000 a month more to live exactly as I lived last year. And that's $12,000 a year more I got to come up with. So that's just the nuts and bolts of it. Let's just be honest. I'm just one person, and I don't have kids at home right now. My children are grown. I'm not having to deal with all these other things. My kids are out of college now, and so I don't have all that to deal with. But that's just me. That's one person. Our citizens are hurting right now from inflation, and you can stand on television all day long and say it's not a problem, but let me tell you something. When you try to make ends meet, it is a problem. And, I realize our government, they think they can just write checks, but here for us, if we don't balance our checkbook, we go bankrupt.
Or we go into debt. Yeah, and with interest rates going up, I covered a lot of this yesterday, but interest rates, if the Fed continues to raise the Fed fund rate, it's just going to put us into a deep recession. They're doing just the opposite of what they need to be doing. And all of this, and the Americans know this, that the policies coming out of Washington, D.C. right now have caused all of this. And this is one of the biggest reasons right now to fight for a convention of states. A lot of people I've talked to since the show Monday, they've called me and they said, Richard, that might be the only way we save this country is through a convention of states. The other way is for the individual states to step up and start doing their part. And I know you work with the education system, and you mentioned that earlier. There's a big push right now to basically just put a stop to student loans, get the government out of the way, and let the schools run it, work with a lender somewhere like they used to, and they are on the hook. So, and there's a lot of different ways that proposals to get federal money. And you mentioned earlier, that's one of the problems is the federal government learned a long time ago how to get their hooks into the states, and that was just giving them money over and over and over for all kind of things, schools, roads, and everything else. And the states become dependent or are dependent, but there are some states that are trying to get off that. Florida's one of them. My state in South Carolina, they're trying to do that. And that's what they need to do. They need to tell the federal government, We don't want any more of your money.
Absolutely. That's what we need to do. I know here in Tennessee, we're, I think, the number one fiscally responsible state. I mean, we have a great leadership as far as our fiscal responsibility. And I think it's important. Like you said, the states need to step up. And, you know, a lot of these governors, though, that are stepping up are, of course, ridiculed, just like Abbott and DeSantis. You know, they sent the illegals, you know, to these sanctuary areas. And I was watching the news yesterday, and I had to chuckle just a little bit because the only defense they could say was, oh, well, they shouldn't be doing that because these are real people. These are real lives. I'm thinking, yeah, and these are real lives that are down at the border, you know, experiencing these things. And I thought, what a lame comment to make. You know, oh, they're trying to make these people political pawns. I'm like, no, they're trying to wake you up and let you see what is happening since you won't open your eyes to what's going on at the border. You know, these are our citizens that are living in all this and dealing with all this. But you can be up at Martha's Vineyard and you can have your little parties and you can, you know, talk about caring, but you don't care.
No.
When it comes to you, when it comes to your town and it messes up your little tea party, well, then, you know, you don't like it. And so you want, you know, we can't handle all these illegal immigrants. I'm thinking, well, and they can on the border towns, really? You know, so that got me pretty riled up yesterday because I thought this is absolutely ridiculous, you know, that this is happening. You know, but those governors that do stand up, they get a lot of ridicule, you know, because they're saying, you know, no more. We don't want this anymore. But I'm so proud that they are standing up.
Well, they are, and these mayors and these governors are going bonkers. I mean, you can only just laugh at them. Like you say, you chuckle. I sat there yesterday laughing at these people. They just panicked. Oh, you can't send these low-life people into Martha's Vineyard. How dare you? Well,
it was funny. It was absolutely funny.
You know, that was...
It was hypocrisy.
Yes, hypocrisy just shows you where their heart is. And
absolutely.
If they have one, if they have a heart. But
well,
it's scary.
It shows that there's one set of rules for them and one set for everybody else. And that's what you get with a socialistic society. We've seen it happen. You look at history, you know, the elite, you know, do you think for 1 minute that the elite in charge are going to give up their mansions, are going to give up their airplanes, are going to give up? Of course not. You know, it's one set of rules for them and one for us.
Well, the last 2 days I spent a little bit of time on climate change and all these proposals are coming out and predictions and this is going to flood and that's going to flood and so on and so on. But I sit there and look at, well, if the Atlantic coast is going to be underwater pretty soon, why are the Obamas go buy a mansion on the coast, you know, maybe 100 feet from the ocean at sea level?
Exactly.
It's all about money, and that's what we're dealing with. But I want to go back. Let me read this. Dedicated to the generation of resolute Americans whom we call the Founding Fathers. They created the first free people to survive as a nation in modern times. They wrote a new kind of constitution, which is now the oldest in existence. They built a new kind of commonwealth designed as a model for the whole human race. They believed it was thoroughly possible to create a new kind of civilization, giving freedom, equality, and justice to all. Their first design for a free people nation was to encompass all North America, accommodating, as John Adams said, 200 to 300 million free men. They created a new cultural climate that gave wings to the human spirit. They encouraged exploration to reveal the scientific secrets of the universe. They built a free enterprise culture to encourage industry and prosperity. They gave humanity the needed ingredients for a gigantic 5,000-year leap. So it's interesting when we look at the Constitution, and I think as these youth are starting to read the Constitution, they're understanding what was created.
Yes.
They're not hearing all this stuff from the media and politicians and all of this. They're reading it and understanding what was actually created.
Absolutely. And I think that we should, and there is, I guess you'd say there are a far radicalized group, and it's not a large percentage, but there's a percentage that holds a lot of control in the tech industry and the media industry that really doesn't want our youth to be educated in the Constitution, and, they've said things like, it's complicated, or, making excuses, why, they shouldn't read it, or, that it's racist, and, all these different labels that they put on it. But what I have found, and just, we're very simple in what we do. We provide a Constitution to our young people of their very own. They can carry with them as they grow in citizenship. They can read the actual words, the Declaration, the Constitution, the amendments, the signers are listed, and the oath of citizenship. Very simple. It's 48 pages. It's not that long, and it's not hard to read. Our founders made it so that the average person could read the Constitution and understand it. And so you're so correct, Richard, when you say our young people reading these actual words is opening their eyes, and they're asking amazing questions. Questions like, why can't we pray in school? It doesn't say that in the Constitution. Why do they say everything we say is hate speech when we have free speech? So that it's opening their eyes, and they're starting to see, wait a minute, these things we're being told are not true.
And that's going to make a big impact, not only today, but in the future. And that's where you and I are looking right now. We're looking at the future, and we're trying to educate everybody, young people, old people, whatever, to understand how great this document is, how great America has been and can continue to be. And that's our purpose here, to educate.
Absolutely. And, our founders, their intention, and it's in white in the Declaration, that all men are created equal. Now, we know at that time, we know that there are a lot of things that were not good. We know that. We know that there were a lot of issues. Women had no rights. They had slavery. But slavery was not unique to America. And if you listen to any of Thomas Sowell's videos and the things he talks about, he goes into, he's just a brilliant scholar, and I love listening to him. But their intent, and you can read it, their intent was that eventually we would become a more perfect union, as they said, and we would change the things that weren't right. And they did. And I think that is really upsetting to me, that our young people are being taught things that are not true, that America is systemically racist. No, it's not. When you look at all of the diversity in all of the different, in business community, in our government, you look at all the diversity out there, that could not happen in a racist country. That could not happen.
Yeah, I've sat with people, they keep talking about systemic racism, and I ask them, I says, would you please explain that to me? What is systemic racism? Mm-hmm. And guess what?
And I've asked that. Mm-hmm.
They can't explain it.
No,
Nobody.
They can't. And I was going to say, I had this conversation with a young African-American young man. He was about 25 years old, and we were talking, and of course, everywhere I go, I give constitutions. Even though we focus on 8th grade, if I go out to eat, I leave a constitution. If I, having a conversation with somebody, I bring it up. Because he was about 25, of a young business owner, and he said to me, my friends, we were talking about the Constitution, he said, my friends, say that, America's racist and they can't get ahead. And he said, but, I'm working and I'm doing my business. And I said, well, tell me, is there anything that I can do here in America that you cannot do because of your race? And he thought, and he said, absolutely not. We're equal. I said, absolutely, we are equal. Take that back to your friends. Let them know that, what they're being told is not true. This victimhood, ideology is so wrong.
Yeah, because when you accept yourself as a victim, you gave away your freedom. When you
gave your power away.
When you decide that you're offended by a statue or the Pledge of Allegiance or the American flag or whatever, you gave your power away. And these people don't understand that. Now, I want to read this by Thomas Jefferson. And yes, I came prepared, Joni. You know me. I've got the quotes everywhere. Thomas Jefferson says, we owe every endurable sacrifice, I love that, endurable sacrifice to ourselves, to our federal brethren, and to the world at large to pursue with temperance and perseverance the great experiment which shall prove that man is capable of living in society, governing itself by law self-imposed, and securing to its member the enjoyment of life, liberty, property, and peace. Now, those are fantastic words. And these were words that were right after they signed these documents, the document of the Constitution. Governing it yourself by self-imposed laws, not by what somebody else wants to force on you. And right. When you look at other writings by the Founding Fathers, I covered this in an episode not too long ago about living a virtuous and moral society. And they address the same thing about living a righteous and moral life, a virtuous life, and then taking that to the public, and then the public society becomes a virtuous and moral society. And that's what he's talking about here. And this great experiment, we're still experimenting, folks, just the wrong way.
Yeah, absolutely. And it is an experiment. And I think that, when you read the Constitution, you see the intent of our founders, and then you see what we accomplished. Here we are in 2022, and there are a lot of countries that still legally have slavery. There are still countries where women are not allowed to vote, so it's very important for us to understand in 235 years, our country accomplished some amazing things. And I think that is something that should be celebrated and it should be taught. And our young people should be excited about being Americans, what it means to be an American. We're not done yet. We're still going. And hopefully we'll be able to, keep moving forward unless we continue to have, and I do have concerns. I have concerns about what's going on in our country today with this division. Like if you disagree with me, then you're a bad person, or, you are, and I think we have to be willing to listen to each other, but we can't vilify debate, because that is a very basic part of this country, as we were founded upon the exchange of ideas and debate. And that is something that we need to protect, and we need to continue to be able to do in a way that we can do it civilly, and we can develop new ideas and things that we need to move forward. Instead of, what amazes me is when I had that conversation yesterday with the lady, it was like she was right because of her views, and she was like making herself the moral authority. And you can't do that. I mean, the government is not our moral authority. God is our authority. And I think we have to be very careful that we don't try to become a moral authority, or that our opinion, because my opinion is just my opinion. Your opinion, Richard, is your opinion. Neither one of us are correct necessarily, because these are opinions. And I think we have to be very careful that we don't view our opinion as the moral authority. And I think that's kind of where we've gotten to in this country. And that scares me. That part bothers me a lot.
That's an excellent point, because in the last many years, the government has become a law unto itself, and some people even call it a religion. But they've painted them as, we will take care of everything. So they've created a society in the United States, and this has been done on purpose, of people that solely depend on the government for food, for housing, for medical care, whatever they need. It's going to come from the government. And
but what
so
they don't understand is the government gets their ability to govern from us. So they're totally missing the fact that your tax money is paying every dime of everything. The government has no money. And I think
produce nothing.
Young people, they produce nothing. Our young people need to understand that, because we've asked those questions when I've been in schools, and I said, where do you think the government gets their money? And they're like, they're like a business. They say, they're like a business. No, their money comes from our tax money. And I think it's really important for our young people to understand that the difference in democracy and the difference in a constitutional republic. And you hear a lot right now. You hear a lot about democracy. But democracy, what our young people have to understand is a constitutional republic protects our minorities. A democracy is basically mob rule. The majority rules, and the heck with the rest of the people. But that's why our founders were so brilliant when they developed the constitutional republic, so that people who are underrepresented will have a voice.
They still have a voice, and they're part of the we the people. They're still part of that. And probably another thing that these youth are learning by reading the Constitution is their role in this country and their rights. And wait a minute, I'm looking at all this stuff going on out there, and the government's not supposed to be doing this.
Absolutely.
And if we get to that point, we've made a major victory.
Yeah, I agree with that. Absolutely. And I think one of the things that, I've kind of, been amazed at all the vitriol and the hatred directed toward the last president, when, he's not even in office right now, and we need to move forward, we need to, but there's so much focus on that. And I think some of it comes down to a spiritual battle, because, he said, I remember hearing him say that, government is not our God. We worship God, not the government. And I think that just makes some people so angry, because literally they think the government is supposed to solve everything or fix everything. The government is us. And they've forgotten
that was the other thing, that, recognizing God, and then also trying to follow the Constitution and being president. And when we look at what the government is doing overall, let's go back 40, 50 years. And I asked the question the other day, I said, after looking at what's happened in the last 40, 50 years, if the federal government had followed the Constitution of the United States, would America be in a better place today? So what is your answer to that, Joni?
Well, I as I'm out and I'm working with all these kids, and I'm seeing, I am just, I'm amazed at the excitement that I'm seeing from our young people. It's almost like we're having not a revival. I don't know the correct word that I should use for this, but
reawakening.
That's a good word. That's a good word, Richard. I say a reawakening. I think people it's almost as if we've come totally full circle. We've come back around. We've gotten so far away from our founding principles that we've come all the way back around. And so I am excited to see what's happening in this country. And even though, we've got so many challenges, and let's just be honest, this is not the first time we've had major, major challenges. I look back on the 1960s. You look at that decade. Look at all the upheaval. We had the assassinations of a president and then his brother and then Martin Luther King. I mean, we had some major, major bad stuff happening, and we were able to get through that. And I do believe that we're going to come out of this stronger. And I think, if anything, it has woken people up in a good way that, the things we're being told, the things we're being, influenced by, whether it be the media or big tech, people are saying enough's enough. We've got to get back to what really, really matters. And I'm excited about that aspect.
Back to the basics, folks. It's not complicated. It is not complicated,
no, it's not.
Folks. I got an email from a friend this morning, part of the Up With America, and an article, and I saw it yesterday, that Christian membership is declining, and it has for many, many years. And he asked the question, how do we turn this around? And I didn't have time this morning to answer it. But if I were to pose that question to you, Joni, and say, okay, our Christian numbers, and let's just not focus on Christian, but all churches, the numbers are declining. How do we turn that around? What you kind of hit on it a little bit ago, but how do we get that turned around?
Well, I think, and I agree. I know that is an issue, and I think. For me, and I can only speak for me personally, but it truly is about your own spiritual journey, and it's not about religion. And I think that's where in our country, there's a big difference in having religion and a spiritual walk. I think it's very, those are two different things. So I think that being able to reach our young people and let them know that they have the ability to worship as they choose, and that we were founded upon the freedom of religion, the freedom to choose or not choose. We can choose not to follow. But I think if you are a Christian, or I think that it's our job is to share our faith in a way that people want to be a part of it. And I think that's where a lot of fear comes in. We don't want to be like China, where, you have to be an atheist, or you're persecuted, or like
killed.
Iran. Yeah, or killed, or Iran, where you have to, you have to follow certain religious laws. I think that, we are so blessed, to live in this country where we can assemble. And we saw that threatened during COVID. We saw those things threatened. And I think, and I hope that woke up a lot of people in the church, that they realized, wait a minute, this is not what our founders intended. We have the freedom to assemble. We have the freedom, to express our religious views and to not fear the government. And that's what the Constitution says. The government shall make no religion, but we are free to worship. And I think it's important for us to, if you are a believer, if you have faith, to share that faith with others in a way that they want to be a part of it. And I think that's, and I think through sharing our Constitution and sharing our actual history, our Constitution was written, the Declaration actually was taken from sermons that were preached in the pulpit. And I think
some of it was taken from John Locke too.
Absolutely. And I think that it's really important, and I'm going to just have to say the churches need to stand up You know, Abraham Lincoln said, "Let the Constitution be preached from the pulpit." He said those words. You know, we need to make sure that we are sharing what we have here, what we have been blessed with. And I think in some ways the churches fell down on that. I think they're so wrapped up in their 501c3 and, you know, that kind of thing. And that was intended. That's a government thing. That was intended to have control, that they're afraid to speak out. But they should be preaching the Constitution from the pulpit. And I do go to churches and speak, and I think that's something that we need. You know, if there's a minister listening, if there's anyone who's involved in the church listening, they need to be willing to get up and share the Constitution. You know, I would love to see this weekend a lot of churches, you know, share the Constitution and to honor Constitution Day, you know, to not be afraid because, you know, our founders gave us these liberties, gave us our Bill of Rights, so that we would not be afraid of our government, that we could get up and we could assemble and we could speak out. And I think it's important today, Richard, that we use our voice and not be afraid. Yes, you know, you'll get ridiculed. Yes, you may have somebody come against you, but that's okay. If you know that you're doing what you're supposed to be doing, then you just have to, you know, not everybody's going to agree, and that's okay. I love having conversations. I love having debates with people. I love listening to other ideas because I might learn something.
Absolutely. And going back to what you were saying there, the number one thing that everyone needs to understand, and they've gotten away from this, they think their rights come from the government. They need to come to that grasp in themselves, that spiritual grasp, that your freedoms, your rights came from the Creator, whether it's your Christian God or whoever's God, it came from them. Now, I've worked in a lot of interfaith in the upstate area of where I live, and, you know, I sit down with these ministers over and over, and we're basically on the same page. And, you know, even though we have different beliefs within our religion, we're on the same page. And we all have faith in God and Jesus Christ, or those I know some great Muslims and some great Buddhists. And they're living their religion the way it's supposed to be lived, and with more people doing that. And the other example, or the other thing to mention here, is what you did and what the founding fathers talked about, is you be the example. You be the example of a virtuous and moral people. And through my experience in my life, and you've probably seen this too, Joni, people will notice your goodness. Now, I don't want to throw out any judging thing, but they will notice your good behavior. They will notice your kindness to other people. They will notice those things. And how you treat people. That's the important thing.
That is so true, Richard. And, you know, John Adams said, the Constitution was written for a moral people, and it will serve no other. It boils down to our Constitution. We have to have a basic moral compass if you're to be able to be self-governed, because self-government is all about self-governance of yourself. Being a good citizen, treating others with respect, honoring their rights, you know, not infringing upon their rights, just like you don't want them to infringe upon your rights. But that's all about self-governance and that all boils down to a moral compass. There has to be a higher moral authority that you answer to, not the government. And I think that is something that, as we've seen morality erode, that's why we're seeing what we're seeing in our country today, because there's not a moral compass.
Well, the secularists have done a good job of convincing people that they have rights to murder, to steal. Oh, you're owed this. You can go to any store you want and take what you want. They owe you. They've gotten rich off your back and your parents' backs, etc. And that is, and no better term but to say, it's an evil concept. Evil concept.
Yeah.
And if you want something, I go back. I talk about my dad and my parents, what they taught me in my early life. But one of the biggest things that he taught me was, if you want something, you go work for it.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's that simple, folks. And so when you start looking at the Constitution, it's not only a guide for government, it's the guide for an individual life. The Declaration and the Constitution is a guide for life. And I've said it over and over, we'll keep saying it. You should have your Bible and your Constitution side by side and study both of them.
Oh, absolutely. And something that we're working with, we also have a project that we're helping as we get into the schools with the Constitution. There's a really cool story. It's called the American Bible Project, and I'm working with the founder of that. And, it's taught from a secular perspective, from a historical perspective. Because a lot of people don't know this, but when the Revolutionary War was going on, King George had the license for the King James Version of the Bible, and we ran out of Bibles here. And so Robert Aitken, who did a lot of the documents for Congress, he took it upon himself to print the first American Bible. And so we are able to place a replica of that Bible into the schools. And that's a really thing, to understand the history. Because the Bible was so important to our founders, and so even Congress, and you can go back and look, and Congress even recommended that every person read the Bible, and that's still on the books today. and a lot of people don't know that.
Yeah, I'm looking, and I hadn't got around to it. I've had the story called September 12th, 1812, is when Congress authorized Atkin to print the Bible and put it in schools. I think it was 30,000 copies, 20,000 copies, and so now I'm trying to find it, and I got a stack of papers and I can't find it, but it's, I'll read that story on the air Monday. But when we look at the founding fathers, number one, there were three things they looked at in society: a righteous society, a moral society, and an educated society. Now, they wanted to put the Bibles into the schools, not to basically convert anybody, but to help people understand virtue and morality, that to learn from those teachings in the Bible to be a virtuous and moral person, and then to take that into society. And so it wasn't about, everybody's got to be a Christian, you got to accept the Bible. No, it was to learn how to be a virtuous and moral person. And that's what we're talking about here. And these are the basics that we need to get back to. The biggest way is for us who believe in those things from the Bible and any other religions to live our lives to be the example. And people are hungry out there. I know I've talked to people and they said, I never knew that. I never realized that God loved me. And to me, the first time I heard somebody say that, it was like, really? But, this was many years ago. I was very young at the time. And I remember talking to a guy several years ago, and he had just taken through his church, a financial class. He was struggling financially, and he and his family and his business was struggling, and they had a class that you could go to. And I talked to him after that, and I said, "What'd you learn?" Matter of fact, I did a video with him and 3 others about what they got out of that, and it's still up on my YouTube channel, folks. I think it is. Yeah, it is. But I said, "What are some things you learned?" He says, "You know what? I never realized I could pray to God about my financial problems."
Mm-hmm.
God is interested in everything we do.
Absolutely.
And it's not just about, okay, I've just read this chapter in the Bible, help me understand it. It's about your whole life, about helping you make the right decisions.
And like I said, it's a spiritual walk. It's a personal relationship. And I think that's what, God is asking us to have a personal relationship with him. And I think that differs from religion. Religion has a very condemning, very judgmental, and I think that's where a lot of people, and something that I've seen, as far as morality, since we've discussed that, one thing that really I think people need to understand is you can disagree, and it's okay. And you can have a different religious view, you can have a different belief, and that's what our country was founded upon. But today, we are being told that we are forced to believe what someone else believes, and I think that's very frustrating because you can disagree with someone's beliefs and still love that person. And I think that is right now with all of the things going on with the, I know we have a lot of the transgenderism things going on, and I think we have to stop and realize that not everybody has to like your choices or accept your choices. And I think what we're seeing is people are saying, you have to accept me, to accept my choice. And you do not. It is a free country. No one has to accept my life or my lifestyle or whatever it is that I do. They don't have to accept that. And I don't have to, I don't have to demand that either. I live my life. And I live my life as I choose to live my life. And so can you, Richard. So can everybody listening. But it doesn't mean someone else has to accept my choices. I think that's where we're really a real flip up today.
And I think one of the things that we learn from the Bible, when Christ taught, love the sinner, hate the sin. And you can do both things. Now, I started thinking, when you were going down that road, transgenderism, because that has been just pushed on us, and other things, the same-sex marriage and all of this stuff. And I remember in California years ago, when all this came up, California, out there, they put everything on a referendum. So they put same-sex marriage on a referendum. 61% of Californians said no to same-sex marriage. But then this small group of secularists went to a federal judge, and one man, and then it went to the free judge panel. They said, no, Californians, you don't know what you're talking about. You can't do that. That's wrong. You can have same-sex marriage. And that's what led to the Supreme Court ruling. And so we the people said in California, 61% no to that, but now it's been shoved down their throat because you had radical judges that said, no, you're too stupid to decide for yourself.
Right. And here's the thing. When we look at the actual population of people who are actually transgender, it's like 0.4%. It's such a small percentage. So, I started asking these questions, and I hope anybody who
keep going,
has
Joni. Joni, keep going. I have to.
I would hope that, for us that are educated, you stop and think, why are we pushing something when it's only 0.4% of the population? And so that made me start to question the motive. Why is this being constantly, talked about, pushed? And it's kind of, in every area, it's being pushed upon us. And I think it's just to normalize. And I think that, we should love and accept everyone, and everyone, that's an adult, should be able to make the choices they want to make, and we should respect their choices. And as long as they don't infringe on our rights or we don't infringe on their rights, then, that's what our country's founded upon. But I do have a lot of concerns about some of the things that are being addressed to our children, because our children's innocence should be protected for as long as it can be protected. And I think that, we have a lot of these parent groups forming that are saying, wait a minute, if COVID taught us anything, it was to see what our kids were learning in school. And I think that has been a positive thing in this country, that parents are waking up to see that, wait a minute, I don't want this pushed on my child. My children have we need to keep their innocence as long as we can. That's a precious thing for our children, and I think that's really, really important that we acknowledge that, and that we are careful with our children, that we don't put things on them that they shouldn't have to bear. There was a beautiful story. Corrie ten Boom told this beautiful story about her father, and they were on a bus, it was a train actually, and they had a huge suitcase, and she was like 6-7 years old, and she had heard her mom and aunt talking about sex, and she asked her daddy. She said, well, I heard them talking about sex. What is sex? And the father was so wise. He said, you see that suitcase? And it was huge. It was bigger than Corrie ten Boom was. And he said, some things are too big for a little girl to carry. And I will carry that for you. It is my job as your father to carry that until you're able to carry it yourself. And he said, knowledge is like that. He said, it's my job to carry that until you're able to carry it. And I thought, what a wonderful, wise analogy, that we have to be careful, and we want to protect our kids' innocence as long as we can. And when they are adults and they can choose how they want to live their life, that's their choice. But I think we have to be really careful with our children. So I'm very glad to see that a lot of the parents are waking up and questioning, because my children are grown, but if my children were still in school, with some of the things that I've seen and heard and the books I've looked at, I would be concerned as a parent. I definitely would.
Well, and that's why there's a mass exodus of public schools. But there's organizations out there that are talking to parents, training them, actually getting them to run for school boards and winning, and getting these liberal secularists off these school boards. And I also want to make a point about teachers. There are more great teachers out there than bad. Okay.
Oh, absolutely. And I do want to say something about that. Yeah, absolutely, Richard.
Yeah, and these teachers, they get their hands tied, and it frustrates them. And I've had a lot of friends that have finally quit. They were getting close to retirement anyway, and they said, I'm done. This is too much. Right. But we've got to recognize these brilliant teachers out there that are trying to do the right thing. And I think you've run into those teachers. They're working with your organization. They're seeing the light come on in these students, in their faces, in their conversations. So can we focus on some of the interactions you've had with some of these teachers and the great feedback you're getting from them?
Oh, definitely. I could read right now off my emails, but I want to just brag. One of our we have, of course, an advisory board. We have an executive board. We have a lot of different people in our organization, and one of our board members, Kathy Kolb, is our education chair for our advisory board, and she's just an amazing teacher, and she gives us a lot of great advice and helps guide us on what we're doing with the students. But our teachers are overwhelmingly loving this project, as are the principals. The 917 Society, we actually actively pursue our schools to let them know about Constitution Day. Most people have no clue that there is a Constitution Day. Very few people, including our legislators, even know that it is a federal mandate that all schools that get federal money are supposed to have a program on the Constitution. In Tennessee, we took it a step further, and we actually have Celebrate Freedom Week. So the schools have a whole week where they're to teach the founding documents, the Declaration, the Constitution, and the Founding Fathers, and then we are approved by our State Board of Education as a free resource for the teachers. And so what we're trying to do is to spread that nationwide and let the teachers know. And the response has been just overwhelming. I just posted a picture on Facebook this morning of a school district in Conroe, Texas, 6,000 constitutions, and the assistant superintendent loves the program, loves providing this for the kids, you know, and you just think that's 6,000 kids being reached with the Constitution. You know, that's just one district, you know, so it's just exciting to see the positive response, because here's the thing I want people to understand about the 917 Society. We provide an actual physical copy of the Constitution. It's a beautiful blue book. A lot of our schools call it their blue book. The teacher signs and dates the first page, makes it a really special day, special moment, and then it has your Declaration, Constitution, amendments, all the signers' names, and then the oath of citizenship that the kids can take as they've done their Constitution Day event. We also have a great contest for teachers. So the teachers can enter our contest, just if they want to send, you know, picture, video, anything they want to send about what they did for Constitution Day. We have 10 winners this year. They'll get $200 for their classroom. We love and support our public school teachers. I was married to a public school teacher for 26 years, and he was an amazing teacher. And I saw all the challenges our public school teachers go through. One of the biggest is funding. You know, they don't have a lot of extra money to do extra things. So this is something that we can do to support our teachers to help them honor Constitution Day. And it's just so exciting to get these wonderful emails and thank yous and how much they appreciate it. You know, I always send out positive, you know, emails to our teachers and principals and say, you know, we appreciate you. We thank you for teaching civics. You know, most of our history and social studies teachers are there because they love history and they love it, but they are being forced in many instances by, you know, overreaching school boards or overreaching, you know, education associations that are trying to force an agenda. You know, and it ties their hands a lot of times. So this is a way that we can just support them and encourage them to keep teaching history, keep teaching the Constitution, and you know. So I'm very motivated to keep doing what I do because of the positive response that we're getting.
See, this just thrills me because there's so many things in America like the 917 Society, the Constitution going out into our youth hands, teachers involved, parents getting more and more involved, and I think the pandemic brought that about. They really learned what their kids were being taught, and they're pushing back. And people in America are waking up now. There's a reawakening to what America's supposed to be. They remember 2 years ago. They remember when things were going well in the economy and inflation was less than 2%, and they were buying all these extra things and didn't have to worry about stuff. And people had jobs, and there were jobs being created. They remember that was 2 years ago. And it's changed that fast, and it's a reawakening to Americans, and especially those that were on the other side of the aisle saying, you know, oh, no, you know, my party will do better than that, and they've done worse. So, but by getting the Constitution out there, making Constitution Day wake people up to this, and the Constitution itself, and you know my program, I'm always talking about the Constitution, the principles in the Constitution. And Joni, you just bring such a valuable insight and experience to the program. We love it. Our listeners love it. I got a lot of feedback from the first time you were on, and we're just going to keep having you back if you don't mind. And I appreciate you being on today. I know you're really busy this time of year, and to taking this time and share with us what's going on and your thoughts. And and your beliefs and your opinions. And I think it got off a different way than I thought it was going to go, but it was a good thing. It was really a good thing. And
good.
But I want to finish from James Madison, because I think it's very important to us as Americans today to understand this. And he said, "It is not the glory of the people of America that while they have paid ideas dissent regarded to the opinions of former times and other nations, that they have not suffered a blind veneration of antiquity for custom, or for names to overrule the suggestions of their own good sense, the knowledge of their own situation, and the lessons of their own experience to this manly spirit." Now, this last sentence is the key to this. "Posterity will be indebted for the position and the world for the example of the numerous innovations displayed on the American theater in favor of private rights and public happiness." Mm-hmm. James Madison. So it is our responsibility, and as these kids read this Constitution, Joni, are they understanding their role and responsibility as a citizen?
Oh, absolutely. And I get that question a lot when I go speaking to schools, and they'll come up to me and we'll have these conversations. These 8th graders are smart. And when they read these words for themselves, they start asking the questions, because our role with the 917 Society is not to push any kind of agenda, is not to influence our kids one way or another. We want them to read the words and decide for themselves what it means to them. And isn't that what education is all about?
It is to think, to understand, and to prove. That's what Ayn Rand said an education is: to think, to understand, to prove. And I say this on this show. I said, don't accept what I say. Go do your own research. Come to your own conclusions.
Absolutely. And it's okay if you and I disagree. You know, we can disagree on something, you know, and that's okay. I mean, that's what this country is founded upon, you know, is different ideas and views. We can learn from each other.
And it was those different ideas and views that came to the Constitutional Convention, but they had a purpose to build a better government. One that was more functional. And they drew from history, from philosophy, from religion, from experience, and put this together. They didn't pull together a certain ideology from here or an ideology. They brought together facts and things that worked. Adam Smith and the Wealth of Nations, that economic system works. And why we want to get away from it beats the tar out of me. You know?
Me too, Richard. Me too.
Anyway, Joni, thank you so much for being here today. Have a great rest of the day and a great weekend. Ladies and gentlemen, it's National Constitution Day tomorrow. Get your constitutions out and start reading them. If you don't have one, they're online. You can order these booklets. Joni, what's your
You can also
Facebook?
go to our website. They can go to our website at 917society.org. They can also, there's a QR code on there, and they can download our Constitution that we give to the kids. They can download it on their phone if they'd like to do that too. So they can have it on their phone. And if they're interested in getting constitutions, you know, we can, send out constitutions. We provide them for the schools, but we can also provide them for groups if they want to reach out. But they can just go to 917society.org and check out everything that we're doing and get in contact with us.
Well, and I think, I'm going to talk with Tom at Up With America because he speaks a lot. And I said, Tom, you need to get these pocket constitutions and hand out at all these places you go speak. Mm-hmm. And I think it'll make a difference. We start spreading this out, spreading the Constitution. And again, folks, you just sit there and start reading it and the lights come on. They really do. So, Joni, Thank you again for being here. and we will invite you back. I hope you'll accept another invitation. And
absolutely. Bill of Rights Day is December 15th. Did you know that? Bill of Rights Day is December 15th.
Bill of Rights Day. There's always something. I mean, this week alone, we started with September 11th, National Day of Service and Remembrance for the attacks. And then September 12th, the anniversary of in 1812 or 14 of Congress approving the Bibles to be printed and put out there. And the 14th was, I just talked about it. What was the 14th? Anyway, it was something to do with this. And then we have Constitution Day. It's been a great week.
Absolutely. And it's getting better. We're going to keep striving to be a more perfect union.
Yeah. Okay. The 14th in 1814 was when Francis Scott Key penned the Star-Spangled Banner, because that morning he saw the flag was still up in Fort McHenry. And the name of my episode that day was America Will Not Surrender. And we are not surrendering, are we, Joni?
No, we are not. We are determined. We're going to bring this country back to our founding principle.
Absolutely. Jump on board, folks. This is your time. So, again, Joni, let's go out. Let me get my thing set here. And let's go out with America the Beautiful. And ladies and gentlemen, that's it for the Medlock Post today. Our guest, Joni Bryan from the 917 Society. You can go to their website, 917society.org. Have a beautiful weekend. Remember, September 17th should be just as important as July 4th because of what happened.
And if you're in Nashville, come to our big celebration. We have a huge celebration. You can see it online. So we'd love to have you join us.
Thank you.
Thank you, Richard.